Well done, Bob. Thank you very much. Always good to see you. See Senator Montgomery out there, my old desk mate. Great to see you, my friend. A lot to talk about. It's great to be with you today. Number one, thank you for what you do. Obviously, the business community is incredibly important to our state. The jobs that you provide, the families that you provide for, food that you put on the table wouldn't happen without y'all. So I appreciate your creative minds and the hard work that you do to grow Mississippi. Number one, elections. Definitely got to talk about that. We've got a big election coming up. As you well know, November 8th is right around the corner. I just wanted to remind you, if you're going to be traveling on election day, you need to go vote absentee. Your clerk's offices will be open this weekend from 8 to 12 on Saturday, as well as next weekend from 8 to 12 on Saturday. So if you're going to be out of town, you're going to be traveling, please make plans to vote. Incredibly important election for the future of our country. Not only that, for the future of Mississippi as well. So just encourage you to make those plans. Make sure your voice is heard at the ballot box. We got a clean bill of health the other day. Cybersecurity is a huge issue right now with elections, as y'all have seen and watched and talked about probably around the country the last few years. So we got a clean bill of health the other day. We've partnered with several different companies, as well as DHS, FBI, CISA, and several others to make sure that our data is held safely. Your data, your voter registration data, and others are safe in our depository there at the Secretary of State's office. So that's elections. We just launched a new program a couple of weeks ago. Liz Johnson is here with me. She's on the front row, our comms director. And this is something that we need your help as businesses. We launched what's called Mississippi Businesses Against Trafficking. And we all know that human trafficking is an awful issue, not only in this state, but in this country. As a matter of fact, we were looking at numbers the other day, and just about every other day there's a new case reported here in our state. Imagine the cases that are not reported. It happens every single day. And I thought when this was introduced in the legislature, I had a group of ladies come talk to me, and they said, listen, we want to talk to you about human trafficking. I said, well, it happens in Las Vegas, it happens in New York, it happens in LA, not really here in Mississippi. They said, Michael, let me tell you something. There's a case right now, and this was a few years ago, but there's a case right now in Lincoln County where a grandfather is trafficking his granddaughter for drug money. That's called familial trafficking. It happens every single day in Mississippi. And so MBAT is a thing that we have launched to really partner with our business community. Just yesterday, we eclipsed the 50 businesses mark that have registered with our Secretary of State's office with MBAT. So we want to train your employees. We want you to know, what does human trafficking look like? What are the different types of trafficking? And when you can recognize it, then who do I go tell? Who do I report that to make sure we've got prosecutions happening around this state? It has to be a deterrent by law enforcement. And so I encourage you to sign up with us with MBAT. Liz is here. She can help you with that as well. But really excited about that. And again, it's something that I'm passionate about. I'm a dad of 3 daughters. It matters. And so when you've got leadership that understands there are issues and we can tackle those by continuing to work hard, that's something that we want to do at the Secretary of State's office. Speaking of tackling, I mentioned Tackle the Tape, something that I'm incredibly proud of, our team, the work that we have done, cutting the regulatory burden here in Mississippi. We had a plan that we introduced a couple of years ago after Tackle the Tape kind of launched. That was really our strategic approach. As you well know, many businesses here, the Occupational Licensing Review Commission, the OLRC, it oversees 29 boards and commissions, and think about architects, think about cosmetology, think about barbers. As a matter of fact, those are the first 3 that we're looking at this year. But 29 by 29 is where we're looking at all 29 of those boards and commissions under the OLRC. We've partnered with the Mercatus Center, with the Stennis Institute, with MCPP, with Empower, with several other partners, and we're looking at each of these regulations under all 29 boards and commissions. So we've recently got a report for our first 3, as I mentioned, cosmetology, barbers, and architects. Over 1,700 regulations under those 3 umbrellas. Now think about if you're starting a small business, and think about those regulatory hurdles that you've got to jump. Well, thank goodness we've got a statewide now that's really focused on cutting that regulatory burden with our partners. It's an important piece. So if you can open the doors for new businesses to start, not only are you growing our economy, but you're providing for families. You're growing this entire state where more of our young people will come back and say, you know what, it is a great time to be in Mississippi. And I want to recap really quickly the numbers in our state. In 2019, we had about 31,000 new businesses open. COVID hits. People think, oh my goodness, this is awful. Business is going to shut down, and it did for a while. But we had 52,000 new businesses open in 2020 with COVID in our face. And people ask, Michael, how in the world does that happen? I say a couple of things. Number one, Mississippians are tough. A lot of people lost their jobs, and they thought, you know what, I got to provide for my families. And by the way, I've always had this dream, I'm going to open a new business. And so we saw that number explode, but we also saw some folks that were taking advantage of the federal money. I get that. Well, fast forward to 2021, you would think, well, it's going to slow down now. 66,000 new businesses in Mississippi in 2021. Right now, 2022, we're on track for 63,000 new businesses. And people say, Michael, how in the world is that happening right here in Mississippi? Let me tell you something. I'm proud of our state. I'm proud to be Mississippian. And I think there are two things that are really advocating for business growth here in Mississippi. Number one, the legislature. I appreciate Speaker Gunn and the approach that he took on eliminating the income tax. I appreciate, I always call him Secretary Husband, Lieutenant Governor Husband, for pushing forward and making sure we got a tax package out this past session. Cutting taxes matters. Businesses look at that. Business owners look at that. Residents look at that. Where do I want to go so I can have more of my money back? It's not government's money to start with. It's ours. So cutting the tax burden is number one. Number two, focusing on cutting the regulatory burden in our state. You are business people. You understand this. You want certainty. You want to be able to project what the future is going to hold with the regulatory burden, with tax structure. So when you have a lower tax structure and you've got this baseline of regulations that someone's out there attacking, so it's only going to get better, businesses understand, let's locate there. And we're seeing that growth. I'm excited about that. You should be too. You don't really hear about that in the news, but that's happening right here in Mississippi. So Tackle the Tape and 29 by 29 has been great. Lastly, I want to end with this. We are the state land commissioner. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. The Secretary of State's office is a state land commissioner. So I started looking several months ago, really about 2 years ago now, about conservation. And many times it's been an object or a subject that we don't really want to talk much about as a state. But we have to. Conservation is important. So we put a group together called the Conservation Task Force. We've got about 40 members, the top conservation minds in this country. They aren't just from Mississippi, they're from all over the country. And one of my favorite parts was after the first meeting, and this is really important for our entire state to move forward, but one of my favorite parts, the guy comes up and he says, Michael, I really enjoyed the conservation talk there, but what was most important to me was as I looked around this room, I saw people that I've never been in a meeting with because it's always been turf battles. You've always had silos. You've always had elected officials who would threaten you if you worked with another elected official. But this is an opportunity where we can all come together with a vision for Mississippi, all work together, break down those silos, break down those barriers. Who cares who gets the credit? What's good for Mississippi is good for all of us. And that Conservation Task Force, working with our Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that the legislature passed, is going to produce dividends for Mississippi for years to come when it comes to conservation. But let's take that a little bit broader as I wrap this up. Think about this. Too many times we hear about good old boy Mississippi. We hear about, I can't work with that agency because so-and-so is mad at that politician. I can't do this because that's your turf and I can't touch your turf. As long as that takes root and holds in Mississippi, this state will not see what I think we could see in the future with growth, with expanding. That's right. That's exactly right. We've got to get around that. It's got to be about what's good for our state. Who cares, again, who gets credit? This good old boy stuff doesn't work for us. We've seen it. We've tried it. Let's move past that. And again, you can't get mad at somebody just because they're working with a certain politician and then have retribution and take it out on them. That's not good for Mississippi. That's not good for our state. We've got some tough issues coming up. Healthcare is one of them. How many healthcare professionals do we have here? Nobody's listening. Good. I see a few. We've got some tough times coming in healthcare. And as leaders, you can't just sit aside and not take positions. You can't just sit aside and not lead on an issue. Leadership looks like a lot of different things, but being quiet and hiding away isn't one of them. So these are issues that we're going to have to tackle. Just as we did with the Conservation Task Force, I challenge each and every one of you. Break down those walls, those silos. Break down those territories, that turf. Break down the good old boy. Let's get together and let's do what's good for Mississippi. You're going to see a lot of talk about postpartum this coming session. And I don't mind tackling this. This is a tough subject. It's one that pulls at people's hearts. Again, I'm a dad, I understand. And one of the things I was talking with some healthcare officials the other day was, if this is important, and let's call it what it is, that is expanding Medicaid. Some people disagree, but that's expanding Medicaid. If this is important, what are some things that we could cut that we shouldn't be doing with Medicaid? Let's prioritize our dollars for the things that actually make a difference for this entire state. So I hope you will join me in thinking like that. We're all supposed to be conservatives, this red state. What's good for Mississippi? We care about our state. So making sure we make good decisions for the future of our entire state, not just this part, not just that part, not just you, not just me, but all of us. That's what matters. So I encourage you next year, we got a great election year. Y'all be watching. It's going to be a fun year. We need leaders that care more about Mississippi than they do about their careers. I hope y'all help me elect those folks. God bless you guys.